Hello, everyone. I hope everyone is well during this time. So, today I'm going to be discussing some practical ethics and the kind of reasoning that goes behind um, our actions in regards to ethical action or ethical choice. Um, and I'll discuss this by presenting it through a personal example that's happened to me recently. I live in a high-rise multi-dwelling building. There's, I think, maybe over 100 apartments in my building. I've had an issue with a dog recently that is in one of the apartments next and down one floor. And I can hear this dog barking from time to time. It's a small little dog with a high pitched bark. Those little dogs that have more bark than bite, and they just bark at everything. They bark all the time, and excited little dogs. The issue is that this dog barks some days for hours on end, and it barks. It sounds like it's upset. So I assume maybe when the tenant of the apartment leaves, the dog is there alone, and dogs bark. Where's my master? For whatever reason they bark, but so it barks constantly. Well, not all the time, but for some days it's for hours on end. And I am a student at university. Sometimes I'm under stress when I have a couple of assignments due in a short time frame. I like my quiet time. I have to read a lot sometimes, and it just gets to me with the dog barking for hours on end. Yip, 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 yip. Yep, 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 yep. It can get to me. I can usually endure pretty well, but one weekend, it was a Friday evening, and the dog, I'm pretty sure it was 4 or 5 hours straight, it was barking. And another dog down the hall on the same floor as me, a big dog, this one sounded like a big dog, was barking down the hall all weekend as well. And I got fed up. And the neighbor directly beside me also was upset because she came out of her apartment and she said, "Whose effing dog is that?" And she went back in her apartment, slammed the door. So she was visibly upset. I was upset by the dog. I told myself, on Monday I'm going to go to the building manager and report it. So I did report it, but that's one, as you'll see, one of the outcomes that I could have chosen. Reporting it wasn't just a simple, I'm mad, let's complain about this woman or this tenant. People who are deep thinkers, philosophers, and ethicists, they don't just say, okay, this is the right decision, something has to be done, and just choose based on what benefits, well, themselves, I guess. But they need to, in ethics, you need to consider the entire situation and all the implications that might result from each action as well. Because with each action, there's a ripple effect. Each action sets off a chain of events that cause consequences. So we can't just consider the immediate ones. We also need to consider contingent ones as well. There's many variables in situations, context to consider. I consider myself a bit of a stoic, and I can endure and have a good stress tolerance, and I can probably weather the barking in most times. Like I mentioned, when I'm stressed, it's a bit difficult to do that. But for instance, I can just put in earplugs, listen to music with headphones on to drown it out. I can use mental tactics to tune it out as well. Use maybe meditation to center myself and dissociate myself from the situation. One thing we can do is to consider the tenant and the effect on the tenant. If I report them, this incurs stress on them. If they get evicted or are told that they need to get rid of their dog. Of course, nobody likes getting evicted. It's a big process to move, and you got to change your address. You gotta hire a mover if you need one. If the tenant lives alone, if it's a single woman with a dog, that's she'll have to get friends, family, or hire people to help her move. That's stress. If she's already in a stressful situation, not in a good situation, that just compounds, her difficult life situation. If they have to give the dog away or give it to a shelter, then the shelter has to shelter the burden of having another dog, and they incur expenses of having another dog, and the dog is living in a cage, and it's a decrease in life quality for the dog. It's a decrease in life quality for the tenant, who now has lost their dog. They're going to be sad. They lose that companionship. Some people consider it as a family member, so it's like losing a family member. Another thing we can consider is other people affected by the situation or the wider community. So the fact that I can hear it and I'm upset by it, and the fact that my neighbor could hear it and is upset by it, means there's at least two, and I assume probably 4 or 5 people that can hear the dog barking in this building. And so that's affecting all of them, and other people might be upset by it. If people work and then to sleep during the day when the tenant's gone and the dog's barking, that's a decrease in life for them. So it's affecting multiple people here. By reporting the situation, I'm not just speaking for myself, I'm speaking up for the community as well, others. There's this thing called the bystander effect. As we can see in the Kitty Genovese case, where she was stabbed and killed, stabbed in broad daylight, and in the middle of like a big apartment complexes, and nobody reported it. And psychologists studied this, and they figure there's sort of a bystander effect where we pass the buck of the burden and say, well, somebody else saw it, they're going to report it. But if everybody thinks that way, then, everybody is culpable to the bystander effect. And so at least one person needs to step up and report things. We can't just assume everybody is going to report it. And the bystander effect, usually the more people there are, the less people take action. Psychologists, social psychology studied this, and they found that to be true. We just think, well, I don't need to call 911, look at all the people around me. So it's important to speak up, and that's one way to look at it. And by speaking up, it also passes the burden onto the building manager, who then has to make a final decision on what to do. By me just reporting it neutrally as a situation that occurred and the facts of it, I don't have the power to really do too much about it. I have power to do some things, but the building manager, who needs to uphold certain bylaws and quality of life for the residents, and so that stresses them a little bit. It puts more on their plate. So even just reporting it has some neutral to negative side effects, and those also need to be considered as well. There's considering myself, the party in question, or the tenant, the community, all those who might be affected by it as well. And it's difficult to decide who's to incur the burden. Is it do I endure it myself? Do I endure the barking dog? Do I pass it under the building manager to have a final decision? Or does it become the tenant who shoulders the burden of having to move or deal with her dog? I don't know, muzzle it or put a barking collar, send it to a dog school or get trained or whatever. So if I do nothing, then the problem recurs. Someone else will have to step up if they feel it necessary or they have had enough. By reporting it, I may solve it for me and the others, and the problem stops, but the tenant gets the burden. And where the burden lies depends on which action is taken. So we need to consider there's pros and cons, and it's the value of each pro and con that can determine which action we do take. Which is right. Do I allow the tenant her peace to continue what she's doing? Do I vouch for my own peace, the peace of the community? And all things considered, we must choose who's to benefit, who's to shoulder the burden of the barking dog, so we can't just tell the dog to stop barking. Dogs aren't intelligent enough to do that. You tell it, shut up, stop barking. It might stop for 5 minutes and start barking again. Dogs can't shoulder a burden like that. I mean, we can consider relative morality or relative ethics, and so that just means that what's right and wrong is relative to the culture, the situation, the context, by always being guided by a specific law or something like that. It might work in most cases. It's called rural utilitarianism, where you always abide by some specific rule. I think personally ethics are, while a standard rule is good in general, it's not a one-size-fit-all. It can never be a one-size-fit-all. I do think that humans do have a personal ethical sense. We have an innate ability to understand right from wrong, due to shame and feelings of goodness. We could use a standard ethical framework to guide our decision in what to do. If we can't really decide on our own initiative, then we can consider utilitarianism. So what benefits the most people? In this case, it would be the community. So I would report it because it would be benefiting me, benefiting my neighbor, and the other neighbors as well. Where there's only one person who really gets the short end of the stick, which would be the tenant who needs to deal with her dog, and everyone else gains their peace of mind and less noise pollution. We could go with a sort of Kantian ethics where we say, in an ideal world, what could I envision everyone else doing? And so that this could be a couple possibilities. We might shoulder the burden ourselves and let the tenant don't report it and let the tenant her peace. Or we could report it and, in effect, think that everyone should counter the bystander effect. So by reporting it, I'm countering the bystander effect. In an ideal world, one would do that. So there's other ethical frameworks we could, follow. I'm not going to get into every single ethical framework, but that's just an example of how one would make a decision that involves the goodness and consequences to people. In sum, I guess ethics is not just doing what benefits yourself. We need to consider a ripple effect. Every action has consequences. If someone, is screaming in my face, what would immediately benefit me would be to, maybe knock them out. Therefore, not incurring the burden of being screamed at, or, scream back, try to put them in their place, and feel superior and in control of the situation. But then we might consider, if we do that, the person might go home and commit suicide, and that's a big thing. We need to weigh the value of the loss of the life to, my own peace of mind. And, I might encourage other people around me to follow the actions that I do, scream back at people, and then we get a world full of screaming people. So there's, a lot of things we need to consider. So I'll end off with, in ethics, you don't really matter. It's not all about you. Of course, I'm not going to say a life is not important. If your life is in danger, a life is the most valuable thing you have, then one would need to take action. Defend yourself. If it's between, getting stabbed in the neck or knocking someone out, I think, the value of that is the life weighs much more than striking a person. But, we can debate that. We should usually consider others first, because we're one person. If our life isn't immediately in danger, consider others. That's being benevolent, open, and, community thinking. We shouldn't just be self-centered on ourselves, but think big. Think you're a cog in a much bigger system, and if you're gonna usurp all the system's resources, then the system falls, and then the cog doesn't turn at all. But anyway, I will end here. We're over 20 minutes. So thank you for listening. I hope this has given you some food for thought. And if you like this content, of course, you can subscribe. I tend to put out, I'm a casual vlogger, so I put out videos from time to time in hopes of enlightening people and, giving them stuff to think about, broadening their mind. So once again, thank you, and have a good day.